This week, it's Parshas Vayikra, and as we know, Vayikra has Vav, Yud, Kuf, Resh, the small Aleph. Vayikra el Moshe, Vayidaber Hashem elav. So why is it the small Aleph? We've heard many reasons, and the small Aleph is because Moshe wanted it to be like the word Vayikra, which means I happen to be walking along and, whoa, Hashem is speaking to me, as opposed to the way Hashem really spoke to Moshe, face to face. So the Aleph is significant. He made it small because Moshe was a very humble man. And sometimes by making yourself smaller, you actually make yourself bigger. And let's look at the power of Aleph. First of all, Aleph can mean Aleph, which is a general. It also is very close to the word
Aleph. Aleph.
Aleph, which means 1,000. So it takes with a lot of little, it says, it's not how many ones you're one, but it depends if you think there's nothing after you, 0, 0, 0. The more you think you're small, nothing, the greater you are. You can go from 100 to 1,000 to 1,000,000. Now let's take the word Gola, which means exile, and you put an Aleph, and it's Geula, redemption. You take the word Mace, which is death, and you put an Aleph, and you have Emes, which is the Torah, which is truth, which is everlasting. You take the word Rash, which is poor, nothing, and you put an Aleph, Rosh, the head, the leader, using your Seichel. Ma, which means why? What's going on? What's happening? And it becomes Mea, 100. These are just a few examples. And finally, Dam, which is blood, which is usually significant to the end of lowliness. Again, Adam, which is our greatness. So there we have the power of the Aleph. Now, Moshe was called the name Moshe. And why the name Moshe? Because he had 10 other names. But Moshe's name, this name Moshe, was given to him by Paro's daughter. When she pulled him out of the water, she used that name. So what are we focusing on? We're focusing on her power of Mesiras Nefesh, that she took her life in her hands when she did that because her father declared that anybody who saves the Jewish children is in big time trouble. But she did it anyway. Why? She had the power of Mesiras Nefesh, which meant that she was willing to save, to do, to become a leader. And that's the power, by osmosis, by example, that Moshe actually absorbed. So that's why we use that name. And once again, Vayikra is the Parsha a lot about humility of Moshe, but it's more about how we can connect to God. Because it says, Adam ki yakriv karban. So first of all, it sometimes uses the word Adam, and sometimes it uses the word Nefesh. First of all, what is a karban? It's that ability from the word that we all know, karov, to get close. And once again, who is making an appearance on our scene? We use an animal or we use a bird. So as I said, Moshe was the humblest of all men. And Moshe also had the ability to be a leader. But how did God test him first? He was a shepherd, just like David was a shepherd. If they could watch the sheep, then they can certainly watch Bnei Israel. And one time a little lamb went running off, and of course Moshe went after him. So, for the 3rd week in a row, making a guest appearance, we have our little lamb that Moshe chased after. And of course they made a song about it. Moshe had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere the lamb went, Moshe was sure to go. They changed the words a few years later to Mary, but that's not important. The point is that the real leader cares about his people. So this is what it is. Vayikra, Karov, we can have a chance to get close to God. And how do we do it? Through the Karbanos. Because really, all it is about getting close. They went to some big rabbi, I don't know the name right now, and they showed him a cell phone. And they said to him, look at this power. You could speak to somebody so far away. And he says, through prayer, I've been doing it for years already. Wow. We have that power. Today, instead of a karban, instead of the sacrifices, we use the service of the lips. We speak to Hashem. And it says, Nefesh ki yakriv. Nefesh is the soul. Why do they use the word soul? Because when they talk about one of the karbanos, which is mincha, which is the lowest of the low, it consists of flour, oil, and frankincense. What it takes for a poor person to even bring this kind of offering, it's like he's giving his whole heart and soul. And once again, they wrote a song about him. Heart and soul, I fell in love with you. So really, we fell in love with Hashem, and we want to do whatever we can. So when you give something from your heart, it doesn't matter what it is. It's much more important of what goes into it than what comes out. And this is one of my favorite ones. The poor people also sometimes give a bird. And when they give the bird, they don't take off the feathers even though they smell. Why? because the feathers are there to make it look a little fatter. If they took off the feathers, it would look very skinny and scrawny, a little bird, a featherless bird. So because they don't want the poor person to be embarrassed and they want him to look like he's giving more, they leave the feathers on. So this teaches us that if you fatten yourself up a little with the upcoming holiday of Pesach, just think you're doing better, because it's more important to look better and to look like there's more of you doing more for Hashem. So you learn that from the feathered bird. All right? So when someone says, what's all that around you? You say, there's more of me to connect with Hashem. And of course they use the word Adam when they talk about Karbanos, because Adam was the first one, and he never stole anything, of course. So we know that you are not allowed to use an animal that you steal or take. It has to be a perfect animal, just like we try to always achieve perfection. And it says, L'irtzo, no, that we should do it voluntarily. Now, how could you say you could give it voluntarily when you're required to do it? Because we know that each one of us really wants to do the right thing, and sometimes externally we just have to be pushed. So that's why, and the mincha, let me just go back to that, has 3 parts: the oil, the frankincense, and the flour. Each one of these things represents another part of our connection with Hashem, because we have to acknowledge that the flour, our existence, which is the basis of our life, comes from Hashem. The frankincense, which represents the joy, the happiest times in our life, and even the oil, which represent the comforts. So basically, the comforts from the flour, the oil, the flour, our existence from the flour, the oil, the comforts, the daily things that we love, and the existential, even the greatest things, the extra little joy, that extra little incense, the extra little fragrant things, all come from Hashem. So that's why the mincha has these parts. And I'll end by saying that the shlomim represents peace in the world, shalem. There's nothing that's better than peace, that's connection. So let's all feel this humility. Like my Bobby said, my mother's mother, who I'm so happy is here with us, she says, don't forget who you are, which means you have to know who you are, and don't remember who you are, which means you always have to have a certain amount of humility.
Esti.
And every person has a time and a place. Yes.
And if we add an aleph to man, which we've got 2 portions today, we get the main.
If we add a portion to man, we get a main. And if we add an aleph to sitter, we get Esther, which is me, and they do say that. So on behalf of everyone whose children are coming in from Eretz Yisrael, who are trying to take the chametz out of the house, and who are trying to clear them inside, have a happy and a healthy Pesach.